Ohio for a day, and I'm gonna be back Sunday.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد المرسلين إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعين به ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فهو المهتد ومن يضلل فلا هادي له. I'd like to greet everyone with the greeting of Islam. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So today, inshallah, I'd like to welcome everyone to week number 38 talk. And today's topic is checking our family GPS. Are we going in the right direction? Right, subhanallah. And it's going to be presented by our dear sister Ezdehar Sultan. And inshallah, without further ado, Bismillah.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Jazakallah khair, brother. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wa hlul 'uqdatan min lisani yafqahu qawli. Bismillah. I just want to start off by saying I am forward to the TMC talks every week since they started 38 weeks ago. It's an honor to be here tonight, and so I pray that whatever we discuss, inshallah, is of benefit to all of us and a means for us to get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So just to kind of get the chat going from the beginning, I'm going to ask a question and see if anyone knows the answer. How many days do we have left until Ramadan, inshallah? Type it in the chat if you know the answer. Let's see. Waiting for the first. Close, amen, but you're off a little bit. Come on. Nobody? Okay, thank you, amen. All right, amen, good job, you are correct. There are 38 days left until the blessed month of Ramadan. And so as we get ready to prepare for Ramadan, as we should be, inshallah, I hope that this is a topic that is beneficial to all. So as Brother Hassan and I were discussing this halaqah, and I was kind of thinking of what is the topic that I wanted to have discussed, I definitely wanted it to be something that's very relevant. And it actually stemmed from a halaqah that I gave, or a talk that I gave a few weeks back about Ramadan, and how really in order for us to maximize on the month of Ramadan, there's some self-analysis that we need to do prior to make sure that we have some foundational pieces in place. And so the title for this is checking our family's GPS. Are we going in the right direction? And so I hope that's something that we can touch base upon today. So I'm going to start off with a very simple scenario. Many of us have events or gatherings that we go to, and whether it's a friend who says, hey, can you come over next week? Or if it's a group of friends who are going to get together or go out to eat, or if you're going to go on a road trip. When that person tells you, hey, can you come over? What is when you accept the invitation, of course, what's the first thing that you do? So you say, yes, I'm coming over. What's usually the first piece of information that's exchanged after that point? We ask, what is your address, right? So if you're going to a friend's house, please text me your address. If you're going to a restaurant, what's the address to the restaurant? So wherever we are going, we know that the first automatic thing to do is to find out where the location of the specific place is. All right, that's the common thing to do. Now, that obviously leads to us using that address to get to where we need to go. What we don't typically do, or I mean, obviously talking about a common person, average person, we don't say, sure, I'm coming over, get in our car and just start driving. And then about an hour after you just start randomly driving, you call up your friend and say, hey, by the way, do you think you could send me your address? Right, so that's not the logical sequence of events. We don't just usually get in our car, start driving in any which direction, and then once we realize that, hey, I'm about a week into this trip, I should probably find out where I'm going. Nobody does that because it just doesn't make sense. That if you have an objective of where you want to go, you have to identify that first before you just get in your car. And so I'm going to be using the kind of the analogy of the GPS throughout, because I think that's something all of us can relate to, because all of us, I'm sure, use a GPS to help us get from point A to point B. Or not only that, I mean, we use it on a regular basis. And so to start off, to kind of go back on what I was just saying, was that when we use a GPS, the first step is to identify our final destination. I'm going to say that again. When we use a GPS, anywhere we go, the first thing we do when we get in our car, and all of us can relate to this, is we identify the location where we're going, our final destination. And then right after select the place that we're going, it then tells us the steps that we need to get there. So make a left on this street, take this exit, or take this highway, then get off of this exit, make a right, make a left, make another right, and it tells us exactly how to get there. So I want to kind of emphasize that the first thing that we had to do was identify the place where we're going. And some of you are probably sensing the point that but I just want to build it up a little bit more before I kind of nail it down, inshallah. This idea of kind of identifying an objective or identifying the destination before we start traveling towards it, it comes more naturally in other parts of our life. So again, all of us could probably relate to if we went to school, post, high school, you decided I wanted to be so for example, in my case, I got a degree in elementary education. So I knew that these are the prerequisites that I needed to take. These are the classes I had to take afterwards. And then and you kind of lay out the plan for what you need to do. When it comes to our job, we kind of know what goals we want, where we want to go, and how to get there, and the sequential steps that get us to that final destination. And what I kind of want to emphasize today is, for some reason, when it comes to the most important asset, the most important part or aspect of our life, we sometimes forget to use the same common sense that we would are. And that very basic essential core is our deen, our Islam, and our relationship with Allah. That is the most important thing in our life. But subhanAllah, somehow we tend to treat it, or let me rephrase that. We know that our end goal is Jannah, and inshallah that is that is the end goal for all of us, is to meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and to pass this test of life so that we can be in Jannah, inshallah, and gain the pleasure of Allah. But sometimes, although we all could clearly say that that is our goal, that I don't think anyone in this group or in this meeting right now would disagree or argue that that is not our end goal. I think I think I could safely say that everyone has that end goal of Jannah, right? Thumbs up, inshallah, I agree. But what we tend to realize is that sometimes we treat that end goal kind of like the person that just gets in the car and starts driving randomly. We have that end goal, but we're not making the steps to get there. And I'll build on that, inshallah, in a little bit. So when it comes to, what I mentioned earlier is about our iman and our relationship with Allah being the most important thing. How often are we stopping to kind of take stock to see what is the state of our iman like? And I know in this group we have several people, so of course everyone should start off by analyzing themselves and analyzing their own behaviors and their own thoughts and beliefs and behaviors. But a lot of us here have a family. So whether you are a mother or a father, this is going to especially apply to you, because now you're responsible for your children, and that's a very, very, very big. And so I work in the field of education. Like a very common thing that parents do is you're constantly checking your kids' grades, and you always want to make sure that they got that A, that they did well on the test, and in their grades online or whatever the case may be. And in the case that your child gets a bad grade or gets like a C or a D, there's a very automatic reaction to that, natural reaction of like disappointment that comes with that. And it's very obvious, right? So it's not that the child has to tell the parent naturally gets, that's something that you would have a discussion with your child about. So there's certain things that we naturally know that we need to check on regularly. And inshallah, the goal of this is for us to make the status of the iman of our family a priority moving forward, inshallah. So we should all start off by having goals for ourselves. And then as we expand on that, for ourselves, and we expand on those that we are responsible for. And inshallah, one of the things that we all get out of this is we all say, or I'm going to give another example. If there's an individual who says, I have the goal, I want to lose weight, I want to get in shape, I want to lose about 20 pounds. And when you go open this person's fridge, you notice that they have, it's filled with sodas, it's filled with snacks and candy and ice cream, just a whole bunch of junk food. It would be an obvious mismatch between the goal of this individual and the goal of this individual and the actions that they're taking to get there. So there's an obvious mismatch. And the reason I'm bringing that up is because when it comes to our families and our level of Iman and our Islam, we all agree that we want to be good Muslims. But when we take and we analyze what's happening in our home and the behaviors and habits that we're establishing, it's something to take heed of is, our habits that are taking place in the house, are they leading towards that goal? Inshallah. So step number one, and I hope you guys, if you're following along, inshallah, the step one is identifying our destination, right? Identify what are our goals. What is our goals what is the goal for our family? What is our mission for ourselves? And then once we kind of establish that yes, we want Islam to be the priority in the home, then it's something that we have to talk about on a regular basis. Conversations that need to be had. And after you identify that destination, next we need to identify the current status of our family. So going back to that example about the man who looked in, who says he wants to lose weight, when you look at what he has in his pantry and in his fridge, it doesn't match, it's not going to help. We kind of need to do the same thing with our families. So if we're saying that we want our kids to grow up to be good Muslims, we have to kind of analyze what we're doing. So actually, I have a little something that I would like to share to kind of help us dig a little bit deeper when it comes to analyzing the current status. So we know that what our end goal is, we want to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So now we want to make sure that we stop and analyze what is the current status. So for example, if you're not feeling well, you feel sick, you feel like something is wrong with you, you go to the doctor and hopefully they check your vitals and they check they do the regular checkup and they do your blood work. That helps them helps them get an idea of what your current status is regarding your health. So if I can, Brother Hassan, share my screen. I think I can. No. Okay. So before I actually share it, I just want to preface this with, I just jotted down some questions or some things that would help us think critically about the current status of ourselves and our household, because the whole point of this is for us to kind of redirect ourselves to make sure we're going in the right direction. So on a scale of 1 to 5, I'm going to list, and again, these are just a sample of things. Or actually, all right, Brother Hassan, can you see my screen? Yes?
Yeah, I can see it.
Awesome. Okay. So on a scale of 1 to 5, if 1 is not happening and 5 is happening very often, we're going to go through this list, and I think just mentally, or you can jot it down, just kind of get an idea of what would you say, and of course, this is regarding yourself and your family and your home, specifically your home, because our home is where we spend most of our time, and that is our base, and that is where our values and our cores are all established in the home. So on a scale of 1 to 5, just have these kind of questions, think about them and think about how they apply to you and your family, and let's see, inshallah, the point of this is to help us get an idea of what our current status is. So for example, there is at least 1 prayer a day where the entire family prays together. Happening often, not happening, happening every once in a while. Quran is recited or played in the home every day. Every member of the home is praying 5 times a day. When it is time for Salah, all activity in the home stops. Is that happening? Or does just maybe the adults in the home pray and everything else continues as usual? When there is 1 meal a day when the family eats together. Are some of you going, that never happens? Or is that something that happens at least every once in a while? So again, just rate your family in terms of how this relates to you. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is mentioned regularly in the home. You know how sometimes children know who their parents' best friends are because they're constantly talking about them? They'll always mention them in their conversations. And even if they haven't met this particular friend, just by the frequency of how much their parent mentions them, they know that how much that their parents love them. Take that same concept, of course, and think about that when it comes to Allah and the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Are you ever mentioned? Is Allah mentioned in the home on a regular basis? The same with the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Is his sunnah is he mentioned, or is Allah only mentioned when it's like unfortunately when we're trying to lay down the law and you're not supposed to do that and that's haram and Allah's gonna be displeased with you? Is that the only time Allah is mentioned, or is he mentioned in a positive note, positive tone on a regular basis? Is the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned on a regular basis? Is dua and Brother Hassan, as I scroll up, are you still able to see my screen?
Yeah, can you just go back up and give everyone a chance just to see the go back to the first one?
Oh, sure.
Yeah. So again, 1 is not happening, and then 2.
Okay, yeah. So on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 is very poor, very low. It's not happening, almost not happening at all. And then 5 would be like it is happening every day. 3 and 4 would be like it's happening. It's maybe not every single day, but it is happening on a regular basis. Whereas 1 and 2 is kind of your indication that this is not happening on a regular basis to not happening at all. And so the idea is right now to get an idea, are we more on the 1s and 2s, or are we more on the 4s and 5s? So I'm going to scroll down. Is that okay, Brother Hassan? I think we were on around number 8. So dua is regularly mentioned throughout the day. So for example, as you know, in Islam, we have many azkar, many dua that we do before everything. When we wake up, before we go to sleep, when we leave the house, exit the house, enter the house, before we enter the bathroom, when we exit the bathroom, before we eat, after we finish eating. So mashallah, we have so many dua that we were taught, alhamdulillah, that are in the sunnah for us to recite on a regular basis. Are any of these dua being mentioned? So for example, is it a habit for your kids or for you all before you all eat to say the dua? Or is that something we only did when we were in kindergarten? You know, we're too old now. We don't do the Allahumma barik lana. That was the kindergarten thing, right? When before we enter the bathroom, is it normal for people to say the dua? So again, these are just questions to provoke your thinking. Obviously, no one knows the answers except you, and the only person that needs to know the answers is you. And so that's another question. Do we personally ask Allah for our day-to-day needs? We all have day-to-day needs. That's not something that's specific to any particular individual. All of us have needs. Are we, on a regular basis, asking Allah for those needs? We need a day off tomorrow, we ask our boss. We need help with fixing our car, we ask our friend who's a mechanic. But do we turn to Allah with our needs? And taking that a step further, if you have kids, and this is essential, is are we teaching our kids to ask Allah for their needs? And again, I like to reemphasize is when is Allah what context do we bring up Allah in our homes? Do we bring up Allah when it comes to happy moments? Thank Allah that you just received this. Or do you need help? Call upon Allah. Or alhamdulillah, we had a great day. Ya Allah, thank you for the blessings that we have. Or is it astaghfirullah, that's haram, or don't do that, or Allah is going to be displeased with you if you do that? This is very, very important because the tone that we're bringing when we speak about Allah has an effect on the thought process of the kids and the relationship that they have with Allah. So it is so important for us from a young age to help kids establish that relationship with Allah. And part of that is by reminding them to make dua. To build on this, do we reference the names of Allah? So if when it's something that has to do with gifts, do we reference Allah al-Wahhab, the gift giver? So again, the idea is Allah mentioned regularly in the home. So scale of 1 to 5. You keep going. We're going to move into Salah a little bit. If someone were to come to your house right now and it was time for Maghrib, or actually time for Isha, and they had to pray, do you have a designated place in your house for Salah? Or would you have to go and rearrange or move things around and clean up real quick and mop that area just for someone to have a clean place to pray? Something to think about. In each of your children's room, each room, not even this, every bedroom in the home have a rug. So number 1, of course, would be no, not every room has one, and 5 has one. The adhan is heard in your home on a daily basis. Can someone go, can you go a day in your home without ever hearing the adhan? I call my parents every day. So now we're transitioning out of Salah. The adhan, I'm sorry, day. It's either a yes or a no, or every while. And if your parents are have passed away, may Allah have mercy on them, are you making dua for them every day? Are we sending dua their way? Something to think about. Gratitude is expressed regularly in my home. Children are thanking the parents, and the parents are thanking, spouse, mother. Is it a normal thing to hear the word thank you? Or are you one of those, if your kid told you right now, thank you for that delicious dinner, you'd be so worried that something was wrong with them because that's so out of character. Something to think about. My children, and back to the gratitude point, I know we talk about kids, but also as adults in the home, are we making sure to adults in the home? So for example, is the husband thanking his wife and wife thanking her husband for the things that they do within the home? So gratitude is something that should be expected from everybody, not just the children towards the parents, but gratitude should be like a culture. So is it a lifestyle, a culture in the home? Number 16, my children greet me in the morning and when I come home. And I wonder if any of you are laughing to think like that. No, that never happens, right? Is it normal for your children to come and greet you? Is there a level of respect when you are in the room, when you interact with your child? It is common to hear yes, ma'am, or sir, yes, ma'am, yes, sir, or no, ma'am, or no, sir, in your home. Again, I wonder if some of you are going, that's never happened, or when was the last time that happened, or hadlet, or whatever in your language, whatever is the way that they would demonstrate that respect, right? When my children, I like this one, when my children listen respectfully when I speak. So when you as a parent speaks, or when you as an adult speak, is it just common knowledge for your child to listen? Or do you have to actually tell them or remind them to not speak while you're speaking, or it's disrespectful to talk while I'm talking to you, or don't talk back? And by the way, these last few ones are very specific to children or having kids. My children have regular conversations with me, that should be me, about their day or life. Casual conversations. Do you have conversations with your kids that don't involve being upset or getting them in trouble, or why did you do this, or why didn't you do that? Do you actually have conversations that are just for the sake of having conversations? Something to think about. This is another one. My children interact with each other on a regular basis. So for example, if you have multiple children, a boy or a girl, or girls and boys, do they communicate with each other, or are they the worst enemies, each other's worst enemies? Or do they each go into their room and they don't really know anything about each other? Or when you ask your sister, what did your sister do at school today? I don't know, I don't see her. Something to think about. Do your children have relationship with each other? And then to kind of last couple ones that we have here is my children make eye contact with me and their siblings when having a conversation. Is that, again, is that common sense? Is that something that your child naturally does? When you're talking to them, they stop what they're doing, or do they continue? You call on your kid, yeah, mom, what do you want? Or yes, ma'am, and they continue to do what they're doing, or do they actually stop and turn towards you? Something to think about. Do you know the names of the influencers that your children follow? And some of you might be going, what is an influencer? And if you don't know what an influencer is, and you have, or what the term is used for these days, and you have teenagers, and even honestly, even younger than teenagers, that's something that you need to be aware of. And essentially, influencers, it's a very common term these days for basically these people that kind of developed a very large following on different platforms, whether it's YouTube, it started off with YouTube, but now with TikTok and Instagram. And basically those who have like a very large following in the millions, they have this title of influencers. And this has become, it's extremely common nowadays. And it's very common for kids to know and follow many of these people. And influencers can range from a variety of categories. So for example, you have a lot of influencers in the area of beauty, like makeup. That's a huge one. So you have a lot of, girls and men, males and females, who basically have a YouTube channel where they give, beauty tips and makeup and dress outfit of the day and how to make yourself look cute and, all this kind of stuff. And as silly as it sounds, it's literally like it's probably like it's a huge industry. And then you have those who just basically like vlog. Their life is so interesting that they record what they do every day and they actually get millions of views. Then you have people who are into pranks. That's a huge thing. Unfortunately, is like basically people who have a whole career making millions of dollars of basically like pranking other people and creating videos of how they designate they design a full-on prank, and then they videotape it, record it, and they get people's reactions. So I'm kind of, the reason I'm going into detail into this is because this is important for you to know as a parent, because it is very likely, extremely likely, that your child is aware of and follows some sort of influencer. And I'm just talking about the adult ones. I didn't even go into, there's ones that are kind of younger ones that are more aimed towards the younger generation. So I know, like, I think a popular thing with kids is like, we're gonna open up toys together, and these kids, they open up boxes of literally, they just get a box and start opening it, and these people get like, you would think it's something that's, as adults, you would think that that's something that's so boring. Why would I care about you unpackaging your mail? That's not interesting, but apparently it is enough for people to literally make careers out of this. So again, my point in mentioning all of this is because if all of this that I just mentioned is new to you, then I highly recommend you maybe have some conversations with your kids, because I guarantee you that they are aware of, or they check or follow or know of people that are that have a very large following. So again, whether it's on YouTube or TikTok. TikTok is a very popular app nowadays that if you're not familiar with, I highly recommend you just Google it and kind of go through it just to see what our kids are being exposed to. So back to the question is, do I know the names that the influencers my children follow? And actually, I think Hassan gave this example once, is, as parents, if a stranger just came to your door, or came and said, I'm going to take someone you've never met in your life before, comes and says, I'm going to take your child for a day and I'll bring them back tomorrow, for example, right? No parent in their right mind would be like, oh, sure, a nice person, just make sure to feed them dinner. Like, no, you wouldn't do that, right? That's a common answer, common sense no. Now, take it a step further. If this was someone who doesn't share the same belief systems as you, like this is a person who their career is doing things that are haram. So wouldn't you even more so disagree to allowing that person to spend time alone with your child? Every parent would say, no, don't come near my child, don't touch them, and don't come to our house again. I would get a restraining order against them, for example. But in this new world of social media and how much it has grown within the past few years, that's kind of essentially what it's like, especially if our children have unlimited access to their devices that have no limits to what they can and cannot see. Then they're being exposed to things that you would never have imagined they have exposure to. And the content that's being put out on a regular basis, it's really getting filthier and filthier by the year. And I know you guys might be thinking, well, wait, some of you might be thinking, what does this have to do with our topic? But I really think it's important to spend some time on this, is because going back to our focus of having a final destination and knowing where you're trying to go and knowing the steps that get you there, you also have to be aware of the turns, the accidental turns that you might take that will take you so far off where you're trying to go. So for example, if I'm trying to go north and I accidentally made a right or a left at one point and I didn't notice or I didn't pay attention and I just keep going, then I will be going in the wrong direction for quite some time. The same thing applies for our kids and our families, is that we have very common that parents have these lofty, beautiful goals for their children, which we should have, and for our families, but there are detours that are attacking our kids on a daily basis, basically asking them to make a wrong turn. Like, we see you, you're on the freeway to Jannah, but we don't like that. We don't like that at all. So we're going to spend our entire day just trying to distract you with as much garbage as we can. And that's exactly, for the most part, what some of this social media is just constant distractions that are trying to win over your kids' love and interest and win over their hearts. And before you know it, they're going down a track. And as mentioned in previous TMC talks before, come a few years down the line, you have kids that are doubting Islam. You have girls that don't want to wear the hijab anymore, or you have kids that are doubting their fundamental beliefs. And you might go, where in the world did that happen? I sent them to an Islamic school. You know, we spent all of Ramadan in the masjid. We go to Jummah every week. Where did I go wrong? How in the world did this happen? And it goes back to these little steps that we're talking about, you know, with the analogy of the GPS, is being very mindful of the route that you and your family are taking. And so when we talk about this social media, and I know Brother Hassan gave a talk today on social media, and having these conversations with our kids, they really are impacting our kids to a degree that you might not be aware of. And it's impacting their values. And hopefully I'll talk about that in just a second. But just to wrap this particular activity up is, so are you aware of the influencers, some of the influencers that your child follow or know of? And then the final one is, do you, as a parent, do you have control, or are you aware of the amount of time your children spend on devices? You know, one of the saddest things I hear is when parents, are you're talking to a parent about their child and how, they're struggling with this and this, and then, you should probably limit the amount of TV. I have no control over them. I can't, I tell them so many times and I can't do anything. That's really sad. That's really sad that when parents feel that they don't have authority over their own children. So that shouldn't be the case. And that's something that really some thought and action, because respect to authority, starting with your parents, is an essential value, especially in Islam. Like, that's up here. And so if your children are not respecting you, or if we are not respecting our own parents to that level, then that's something that should set off an alarm. Just like our child getting a D or an F, right? That should set off an alarm for us. So the point of this, I hope that it kind of helped us get an idea of what our current status in our family is. So out of your curiosity, was that helpful? If you want to put a thumb up or put yes or no or whatever in the chat, did that help you kind of think through a little bit deeper? Like, wow, did it highlight maybe some areas in your own home that you feel like, okay, that's a really great point. Alhamdulillah, I got some 4s and 5s, so I at least know what my strengths are, but then also showed you some areas where I need some work, right? I need some help. And those are just some examples that I put together. And of course, there's so many more. And what I would like to, thanks for those of you who are giving me some feedback, Jazakallah khair. So that was to just have an idea of what your current status is, because it is very important to know where you are before you know where you're going. And again, the other example, if we're talking about the GPS, is when you do search an address in the GPS, where is the start location? Like, what is it always the start? It's your location. And that's what it says. It says your location. Does the GPS give you directions from where you were 1 week ago, or where you were last month, or it starts giving you directions from the place you visited? That's not how the GPS works, and it's not how it should work. It gives you directions from where you are right now. So taking time to analyze our current status of a family helps you know now, so now I can decide, or I can help determine where am I going to go next, inshallah. Now, the second thing I really want to mention regarding that is, I hope none of that should be defeating. And I know sometimes someone might be thinking, wait a minute, there's something called influencers. My kids are watching YouTube. I'll show them. Tomorrow, no one's having a phone. Internet is going to be cut off. Khalas. Problem dealt with. GPS is successful. That's not how we handle things. And that is what we do. And please don't do that. Please, please. That's not what TMC recommends. But that is absolutely not the course that you should take. I think it's important to note is that when you know your current status, you have to take the right steps to move your family forward. And as much as we sometimes want to take everything away from, I want to limit myself, or I want to take this away from, don't want them to have a phone, know what a phone is, know what an iPad is, just have all of us will read on all day. That would be ideal, but that's not, unfortunately, the what we're living in. That's not the society that we live in nowadays. So here's what I definitely recommend is start developing relationships with the people that you are responsible for in your life. So again, regardless or whatever, everyone here knows what their status is or what your current status is. So you know the people that you are responsible for. So starting off with yourself, you're responsible for your deeds. And we mentioned earlier, our parents. If you're married, your spouse, you're responsible, you have responsibilities and duties towards each other. And then when you have kids, that's the biggest responsibility of all. You want to make sure that you have good relationships with each one of those groups of people. So whether it's your parents, whether it's your spouse, whether it's your kids, we need to make sure that we're doing things on a regular basis to keep that relationship healthy, to keep that relationship sound, to keep that relationship alive. The more things we do to keep that relationship nice and safe and healthy, the easier it is for us to make progress together. So for example, if our focus with our children is to have a healthy relationship with them, where we actually have conversations, they tell me about their friends, they tell me about what they do with school, you want to be able to reach a point with your children where they can easily tell you things without the fear of you getting mad at them. So for example, if you tomorrow for breakfast goes, so tell me, do you have any influencers in your life? Don't say it like that, but you know my point. If you want to, let's say, have a conversation about, do you follow anyone? Who do you follow on YouTube? Like that would be a nice way to start a conversation. Is I noticed, you spend a lot of time on YouTube. Who are some of the people that you follow? Anybody funny? When you approach it in a way where you're not, do you watch YouTube? Who do you follow? That automatically is going to give them a sense of, I better tell them the name of a sheikh or I'm going to get in trouble. And you don't want that. You want them to be able to open up to you. So when you have a casual conversation, just so what's the latest trend on TikTok? What's the latest dance? They'll be like, whoa, like they would get so excited that you are actually first of all, what's going on in their life. They're going to start opening up. And inshallah, they're telling you, oh, I didn't know what TikTok was. And then maybe they'll start telling you about the newest trend, which I'm going to just give you, they're all what's the word that I can, they're all, can I say dumb? Astaghfirullah. Like all of the things that, like the trends are literally something that you would be like, really? You're squirting water at people? Okay, sounds like fun. Like that's literally what it is. They just, there's a new trend that comes out or a new dance, and then everyone starts doing it. And so my point is, when you have this conversation with them, don't be shocked when the content of what they're telling you is something that you feel like is so unintelligent. Like, why would you be interested in that? Put that to the side and just have that conversation with them. Let them open up to you. Let them tell you the names of these people. And if you can, like, try to remember them. And then when they're gone, you go search these people and you see who is it that your kids are spending so much time watching, following, liking, emulating, because they're spending a lot more time than you probably think they are, especially if they're age 10 and up. This is not including all the gaming that is happening, whether it's Roblox or Fortnite, or all the other games that are very popular right now. Ask them about that. Ask them what's your favorite game on Roblox, or what level are you? I'm not that familiar with Fortnite, but ask them about what you look like you actually are interested and you're not trying to get them in trouble. And even when they give you an answer that you don't like, still act like you're interested, but make a mental note of that in the back of your head. Because the goal isn't to try to stop what they're doing. No kid is going to be like, oh, my dad said stop watching YouTube, I'm going to stop watching YouTube. They're just going to try to find other ways to watch YouTube so that you don't know. We don't want that to happen. It is much better for you to know what they're doing and for them to even come to you and be like, do you know what the latest thing? That's kind of the relationship that you want. Because when you have that relationship, inshallah, eventually you can get to a point where you're like, Habibi or Habibti, I know I really love watching those makeup tutorials, and some of them are very interesting, but I think that you should try and maybe limit how many you watch. So instead of watching 5 every single day, maybe you should try to maybe watch 1 a day or 1 a week. Because if you keep watching these videos, because I know you tell me that it have an impact on you, but when you keep watching something, even without you knowing, it's going to have an impact on you. And I noticed, Habibti, that you have been, trying to sneak in a little bit more makeup these past few days, which I understand, but I think that it might have something to do with you watching this YouTuber, or watching, surrounding yourself with this makeup all the time. So you see how that kind of shifts the conversation. Instead of you're not allowed to wear makeup, or if you watch this video again, you're going to see. the difference, right? So the goal is we want to teach our kids how to have, we want to have our kids open up to us so that they see us as an ally and someone that they can trust. And that way they don't have to go to their friends all the time without seeing the parents as someone who's going to punish them. And this is so important. And being someone who's around kids all the time, and you really see the effect that it has on them. And it's sad to see that sometimes the parents have no clue. And a lot of times these parents are parents that are working so hard to make sure that their kids come out on the right path. They're doing, excuse me, they're doing all the right things. They're putting them in the right programs. They're trying to put them in Islamic schools. They take them to classes on the weekend, or they try to engage them. But sometimes they're just so oblivious to some of the things that their kids are exposed to, and those things are just taking over their hearts to the point where the kids where if a child found out that someone that they follow died, they would probably be very affected by that. Not so much so about hearing when they hear a story about something from the sea or something that related to Islam, it wouldn't affect them as much. It's because there are other things that are fighting, are competing with their love. And it's important that we are aware of that. So I know I spent a lot of time talking about that, but I think it is very important. And if there's anything that, one of the things that we get out of this tomorrow, moving like an action item, is for us to have that conversation with our kids. And now as adults, we're not immune to that. I know all of us probably have, social media accounts or things that we follow. But we need to also analyze our level of obsession with that. And make sure that it's at a healthy level, because we have to check ourselves before we check our kids, right? We have to be that role model before we tell our child not to spend so much time on social media or online. We ourselves have to make sure we are modeling that in the proper way. And just like we want our kids to make family a priority, we want Islam to be a priority in the home, we have to make that a priority. And some of the ways that we do that is in that kind of quick form of a survey is by starting with the foundation. So when it comes to Salah and when it comes to Quran, are those present in the home? And I can't emphasize in Salah how important it is. There needs to be at least minimum one Salah a day where everyone in the house knows I can't get away with this prayer, like not praying with I have to, whether it's Isha, Fajr is a good one because everyone is likely to be home at Fajr. There's no, I have to go to work, I have to whatever. But there has to be a prayer where everybody comes together. When you check on the family, everybody sees each other. And maybe after that Salah, you could be a perfect opportunity to maybe, share a hadith or share a story, or you can, depending on the age of your kids, have them prepare something. So let's say you have 4 kids. Every Monday, this child knows that they have to, read the hadith for the day, for example. But little things like this, they go a long way. I also want to note that when you're doing things like Salah, when you want to have family Quran time, it is so important that this is when you are in your best mood. It is so important that when you are doing things that you want to instill in your kids, that love for Salah, that love for Quran, you are in your best mood, not your worst mood, because that has a huge impact of the association that the kids will have with that. Right? So if it's like, come down for Salah, why do I have to keep calling you? Stop talking, stop hitting your brother. It's tension and it's cake and it's not relaxing, right? But what we would try our best to do is let that be the best time. Like, let that be the time. Like, I know if I ask Baba something at Salah time, he always says yes, right? Let them associate Salah and Quran and those moments with the happiest moments of their childhood. Because that, inshallah, will lead to them growing up and having positive memories and growing, and growing up with those habits. I always like to joke that when inshallah, if you start having, Salah together as a family, especially if you have younger ones, like I would say 12, 13 and younger, and you pray together that first time, you'll notice, like, you will probably get so irritated by how much your kids move during Salah. And you'll actually realize that, wow, this Salah is something that we need to work on. It's something that we need to practice. Whether they're tapping on one foot or they're leaning on one side, or they'll look at their person and they'll start pushing each other. And so if these things tend to happen, don't take them in a negative. Don't yell at them, don't get upset with them, but take it as something to work on. So an example that I give, one of the things most people, adults even, but especially kids, struggle with is focusing on their spot of sujood during Salah. Like their attention goes everywhere. So all day long, they didn't notice that the living room was dirty, but during Salat time, they will be able to tell you that there is dust on the table, trash under the couch, everything they realized it during Salat, subhanAllah. But when you were asking them earlier, they didn't know what was dirty, right? So during Salat, they're going to just notice everything. Their gaze goes all over the place. As a parent, what I would recommend, or as a teacher, is instead of using that as a time to yell at them, stop looking everywhere, focus, stop looking at your brother. Instead of treating it in that way, what I would recommend is, all right, guys, inshallah, for the next week, we are going to focus on one skill during Salah. And I'm really going to look forward to see who's doing a really good job at keeping their eyes on their spot of sujood. I know it's tempting to see what's in the kitchen, and I know it's tempting to see what's in the living room, but I really want you to focus that when we're praying together as a family, when you're praying, try your best to keep your eyes on that spot of sujood. All right? So do you see how now you turn it into something fun, a challenge, and depending on the age of your kids, there can even be like a reward associated with that, but it's taking something that they need to work on and helping them develop that. Again, we as adults struggle with things like that. So it's only right that we're merciful with our kids. And if our kids are acting up a certain way, whether it's in Salah or when they're reading Quran, they're being disrespectful, that means we have something to teach them. So when we see that in their behavior, that should be a red flag. That's an area I need to focus on. If my kid thinks it's normal to have conversations or yell or talk when Quran is being recited in the same room, that's something that I need to teach. Just like we need to teach the basic skills of math and reading and writing, that's something that needs to be taught. So all of these kind of go under our goals that we're trying to reach as we reach our final destination. I'm going to go back to the example we mentioned earlier. Is when it comes to how how kids or your kids or kids in general deal with you or talk to you, you need to make sure that they're doing that in the proper way. So if your child, if it's normal for them to talk back or to ignore you when you're talking to them or to walk away, you're in the middle of a conversation with your child and they walk away, that is not normal. And that should not be normal in your home. That is a big deal. And they should know that that's a big deal. That disrespect should not fly in any house. And you would think, well, obviously common sense is, why are you mentioning this? Because it's very sad to see that it's not becoming a common sense. Actually, what we're seeing now is kids determine what parents are or aren't going to do. And the parents sometimes give in, so that really needs to be established. So if a child, is not being respectful, or if this happens to be a tendency of your child that they don't, when you talk to them, they're not looking at you, they're not listening to you, the dad just walks home, it's as if nothing happened, to go greet him, no one gets up to, the mom just made a delicious meal, people eat and don't even thank her or acknowledge or just, can I help you? Can I set the table? These are things that if they're irritating you as parents, or if you're noticing that it's becoming more common, you need for that. There needs to be something that's taken seriously. And what I would recommend is you start off by maybe having a family meeting where you go over the expectations. Guys, I know it's been crazy since the pandemic, but it looks like we need to review some of the basic things. When your mother or I, or when your father and I are talking to you, you stop what you're doing and you look at us and give us your full attention. And it is very important that you start following that. Like, those conversations need to be had. We need to be comfortable telling our kids what is expected of them and holding them accountable. And if basic things like respect and salah on time and basics of Islam cannot be met, that's when privileges need to be taken away. So it's funny, like the parents be like, I don't know what to do. They don't listen to me. And then you look at the kid, he has a car, he has a phone, he goes out, he has full, apparently unlimited access to cash. What do you mean you don't know what to do? Start taking away where it hurts. Let them feel it, because that's when they'll start learning what's really important and what's not important. So again, things to keep in mind, because these are some of the foundational things that we need to make sure we're instilling in our children so that they're growing up to be the respectful, well-rounded Muslims that we pray they become, inshallah. I'm going to just quickly check the chat. I don't think there are any questions. And so the first step we talked about was identifying what our destination was, and that is the pleasure of Allah and Jannah, and making sure that we pass this test called life, and not just us, all of our whole team, our whole family, inshallah, we want to be together in Jannah. Then we said, okay, once we identify what our destination is, we need to know what our current location is. We need to know what our current status is. And that's when we kind of went through those examples of, okay, on a scale of 1 to 5, how would I classify the current status of my family? And hopefully that was provoked some thought and maybe areas of, first of all, helped you recognize areas of strength. I think it's important to know where you're doing really well so you can build on that. And then, excuse me, after realizing areas of strength, then identifying areas that you felt like, well, this is something we really need to work on, and identifying those areas of improvement. Now, once you have an area, once you identify your areas of improvement, that's when you now kind of want to decide the route. So what are the steps that we're going to take? So if we were to take an example from that list, is okay, I know that we Quran is not regular in our home, unfortunately. What can we do to help to make that something? So the next step is really identify the habit or a baby step that will help you in the long run reach that goal. So I'm going to say that again. Once you identify your desired behavior, so in this case, if your desired behavior is for Quran to be recited regularly in the home, then the next step would be, okay, what's a very small step that we can do as a family that will help us over time reach that goal? And I want to emphasize the word small, because in order for this to become a habit, which is something that we do on a regular basis, it needs to be doable and it needs to be something that is easy. If it's something that's hard from the first day, you might do it the first or second day, it's not going to last. And subhanAllah, we know that in the Prophet ﷺ told us that the most beloved deeds to Allah are those that are consistent, even if they are small. And you are more likely to have success for yourself and as a family if you start off with a goal that is small. So going back to that example, we want Quran to be regularly recited in the home. So the first thing is you got to figure out, okay, well, what is it currently like? Is it happening? Is it not happening? If you're in a situation where you read Quran maybe 2 times a week, so it's happening, but it's not happening as often. So then you know that, okay, well, what can we do to make it more regular? So every day, maybe after the salah that we pray together as a family, everyone's going to open up the Quran and we're going to read, maybe we'll read Surah Al-Mulk, for example. That would be a good example for a family that is already in the habit of reading Quran every now and then, but they just want to up it a little bit. But is reading Surah Al-Mulk a good first small step for a household that hasn't opened up the Quran in months? Somebody in the chat, is that a good small step? Family that hasn't opened up the Quran in months. Would reading Surah Al-Mulk starting tomorrow be a good? Yes, exactly. That wouldn't exactly be because obviously that's a little hard. Yes, Sister Maryam, something shorter, very good. Maybe something in Juz Amma, like something in the last chapter, the 30th chapter, starting with that would be something small and realistic. And especially a lot of little, the younger kids, those are the surahs we tend to learn first, the surahs that we tend to know. So it would be a good idea to start with those. So I hope that was a good example to kind of demonstrate how once we identify our area of weakness, we now use that weakness to set a goal. So the weakness was, oh my God, Quran is not being recited in the home. All right. The goal turned into, we want Quran to be recited more regularly in our home. Then we decided on a habit. The habit was every day we're going to open up the Quran and recite Surah Al-Mulk. Now, in the example, I didn't, or in the case of a family that maybe isn't as regular with the Quran, is it could be, we're going to gather as a family and we're going to open up the Quran and read a small, a surah from Juz Amma. So again, identify the weakness, turn it into a goal, identify a habit that over time will reach that goal. Because even that family that's only reading Surah Al-Falaq, Surah Al-Nas, and Surah Al-Ikhlas every night, after a few weeks, I bet you they're going to be like, oh, that's pretty easy. Let's expand on that. Let's add another surah. Let's learn another surah. Or even if let's say reading the Quran is something that your family struggles with, then we're all going to sit quietly with no devices, no distractions, no books. Everyone's going to be physically present, and we are going to play a surah, whether on YouTube or whatever, if you have a CD, whatever it is, and we're all going to just listen to it. We're just going to listen. We're going to make it a family habit to listen to the recitation of Quran. And during that time, no one can be distracted by anything else. That is an amazing first step because it doesn't require, a previous knowledge if that's something that might intimidate you. So if that's something that everybody starts off with, and then over time, after hearing a surah over and over again, maybe the next step would be like, all right, now we're going to open the Quran and we're going to follow along as he's reciting. So we're going to try to read along with the sheikh. And then that builds up. But over time, that's where those habits are going to kick in. And so inshallah, you are going in the right direction on the GPS because those steps are leading you to your desired direction. So inshallah, that really nailed it home. When we identify our area of weakness, we turn that into a goal, then we assign a habit to it. And that example was just for Quran. You do that with everything else that you feel needs to be fixed in the home. So whether it's the salah, whether it's the communication between siblings, whether it's the communication between family, between each other, identify what your goal is. I want my kids to spend at least 10 minutes together a day, having fun together, whatever. Identify a goal. I'm going to buy puzzles, and every day they're going to do puzzles together. Like they'll have to work on a puzzle. Maybe it's a 100-piece puzzle or a 1,000-piece puzzle. And while they're going to spend at least 10 minutes a day working on it together while they're having a conversation with each other, for example. So I hope that you guys are kind of getting ideas for how we can start implementing these habits, because these habits are where you're going to see change. These habits are where you're going to see results. And these habits are what we are going to, inshallah, help us reach our final destination. And Islam, subhanAllah, Islam is a religion of habits. I mean, look at other, in other religions, it's kind of like, you go to church once a week, or you do this once a month, or once a year, we celebrate this. Islam is not like that. Islam is your daily habits and commitments that you need to stick to, because it's subhanAllah, the one who created us knows that in order for something to be consistent, we need to be doing it on a regular basis. So we want to make sure that within our home, because our home is what we control. We can't control what's happening outside of the home most of the time. But within our home, what are we doing to make sure that there are habits that by default, by being a member of this home, you are going to have habit A, B, C, and D, because you are under my my accountability. And I know that I have a big part of what happens or how much I help you learn about this deen. So I don't want to risk at all you not being in Jannah with us. So by being a member of this household, we are all going to be working together to make sure we have the habits and behaviors that are leading us to our ultimate goal of the pleasure of Allah and Jannah and eternal happiness. Inshallah, in Jannat al-Firdaus, may Allah make all of us the inhabitants of Jannat al-Firdaus. Say Ameen. And so with that, let me just check the time. How much time do I have, Brother Hassan? I'm not going to take too much longer, inshallah.
Oh, you're good. Don't worry.
Okay, but I'm going to try to start wrapping things up, inshallah. I'm just going to check the chat. Yes, being consistent with developing new habits is a key. And oh yes, focusing on the building the love of Quran in the hearts, that is that is huge. That's really huge. And that could be a whole nother session maybe, inshallah. But I would like to say on that is, especially depending on how young your children are, but regardless, when it's time for Quran, when it's time for Salah, I want to reiterate, it should be the happiest time of the day. Like that really should be the part of the day your kids look forward to. And with little kids, I think that there's, it's sometimes helpful if you find it beneficial to have like a salah chart, like when they're below the age of 7 and they don't even have to pray, or when they are 7 and they're starting to get in that habit. It's nice to sometimes have a chart to motivate them for every time they pray, they fill it in. And what I always recommend to parents is you already buy toys and things for your kids regardless, right? Whether they earned it or they didn't. So for example, if you just bought your son this remote control car that he's been, instead of just handing it to him for no reason, just be like, hey, here's the remote control car. You got, you got your salah down on time for this next week. It's yours. You get what I'm saying? So now, not only is he going to get the toy that he wants, but he's going to associate it with salah. So inshallah, that will help him have, develop that positive association with the salah because, because of the things that we're tying to it, inshallah. So just some things, but again, that could be a whole discussion on its own. So I think we are on step 4, which is the final step, I believe. Oh, no. Okay, there's one last step. So implementing the habits. So once we kind of establish what those habits are and we're making sure we're implementing them, then we kind of get the family together. We have a family meeting. We all discuss what our goal is, and inshallah, we all work towards that goal. And then the last and final step that I want to at least discuss today is to recalibrate, to check up, to review, to analyze often on a regular basis. Anyone who owns if someone owns a business, or an organization, it's very common for you to have regular meetings with, especially those that, maybe the board of directors or those that are in management, where you're constantly reflecting on your performance. How were our sales this week? Where was our, where our dips? Where were our weaknesses? What were the cause of that weaknesses? Why didn't we make as much money as we had intended to do? You have these discussions because you obviously want to see and make sure that your business or organization is growing in the right direction. We really have to see our family as the most important organization in our life, and we need to have those meetings on a regular basis. So whether it's between the, first of all, on an individual level, if it's just you need to be stopping every month or so and saying, how was this past month? How are my salahs? How was I on my, all of my priorities and all of my responsibilities? That's something that's necessary. But when you have a family, at least quarterly within the year, whether it's between spouses, just sit down and to be like, how have the kids been? Have you noticed they've been off this week? Or have you noticed they've been doing awesome? I think ever since we enrolled them in that program, that's really helped. Or ever since we started praying Fajr together, that's when I noticed they stopped, the mornings got a lot smoother. Having these regular check-ins with each other, with your family, to see what's working and what's not working, that is essential for the successful running of your family and making sure you are on the right path towards your destination. The same conversation goes when, this kid has been, our child, for example, has been really off ever since he met that one friend. Ever since he met that one friend at the gym or at the YMCA or whatever, I noticed he's just been so disrespectful or he hasn't been responding. When you notice those kinds of patterns, then you're able to target or treat the issue before it becomes something bigger. Before this friend has a bigger influence on him. Before this friend or whatever, or this something that they've been doing starts to take over more than it should. If we're having regular check-ins as a family where we recalibrate and we reevaluate, then we're able to catch these things early on and capitalize on the things that have been working. So if you've been implementing something in your family that has been working, that's a great opportunity to be like, all right, let's do more of it. Let's do more of this. We've been praying Fajr together. Let's try to add an Aisha too. We've been reading Quran every night. Let's maybe up it a page. Or now let's have the kids recite. Always look for opportunities to increase that love and that remembrance of Allah in your home. Because believe me, it doesn't matter how your house looks, how big it is, how fancy it is, what neighborhood you live in. None of that matters. How your house looks outside, on the outside, does not matter as much as what is happening on the inside of that house. That should be your biggest worry. Your biggest worry should not be, when am I going to be able to get that house? Or when am I going to be able to find the home of my dreams? Our biggest concern and worry, especially if you have kids, should be, am I making the home that we live in one that is pleasing to Allah? Because that is going to be way more important than what it looks like on the outside. You can have some people have the most beautiful home, and then they have the biggest problems on the inside. And they're all so unhappy. Every person is in their own room living their own life. But in people's eyes, hey, we're living the life. We have the beautiful, American dream. That shouldn't be our priority. And we want to make sure that we are reminding ourselves that it's what's happening in the home. How much is Allah being mentioned? Is he being remembered? How much are our kids growing with the remembrance of Allah? How much importance for Allah and Islam are we putting in their hearts from a young age? That's important, whether you're in an apartment or whether you're in a 3-story, mansion. So that's something that we really need to keep in mind and remind ourselves, because this dunya does a really good job at reminding us of what we don't have and showing us all the things that we should be aspiring for. And sometimes we fall for it. All of us have weak points where we just go, man, why don't I have that? Or why am I the only one who A, B, or C? And we get kind of distracted, but we have to have those systems in place. So whether it's your best friend, whether it's your sister, your parents, your brother, or your spouse, constantly checking in on each other for the sake of Allah. Like, how have we been doing? Are we making sure that we are on the right path? Because at the end of the day, that is the most important part of our life. Everything else is really secondary. Because if we die tomorrow, it's really our state of iman and our deeds that's really going to help us. Our house is going to stay here. Our car is going to stay here. Our friends, they will probably be sad for a little bit, but everyone will eventually move on. So we need to invest for ourselves first and foremost, and then for our families and those who we're responsible for, to make sure we all have the necessary equipment and the necessary tools to help us on this journey called life to reach our final destination of Islam. And that's not going to happen by default. It's not going to happen by just putting them in an Islamic school. It's not going to happen by putting them in a Quran class once a week. It's going to take effort. It's going to take work. And just like we would never let our business just go, okay, I'm going to invest $1 million and I'm going to just hope it, turns out well. We would never do that. Never. We should never do that with our families. We should never do that with our iman. And so as I wrap up, I hope that the next time you guys open your GPS. Yes, Brother Hassan.
So I got a question from Facebook. If you want to take questions.
Okay, sure.
So they're like, what if both parents have to go to work and they can't be at home as much? What should they do? Yeah.
That is that is a tough question, and I don't think there's a right or wrong answer. But I think sometimes, obviously, work, subhanallah, you have to pay the bills. The bills have to get paid, and when both parents work, that's something that happens to be the case. But if there's a situation where both parents are working to maybe maintain a very high standard of living, maybe a standard of living that isn't necessary, but it's a lot more comfortable. It's a lot nicer, and that's the reason for maybe why both parents have to work. Then maybe this conversation could lead to, is it possible for one of us to maybe, get less hours or take to reduce our level of hours a week, for example, or find something different that will allow us to spend more time with our kids. So although you might feel the effect materialistically, or like in terms of your standard, and certain luxuries might disappear. But if that discussion can be taken to see, well, what's the balance? Because if both parents are working so hard to create a life for their kids, but because of their absence, their kids are living a different life that's going to take them down a wrong road, I think it's a safer route for someone to maybe, sacrifice some hours to spend that quality time with the kids so that their iman is not at risk. And of course, I don't know the situation of this family. I don't, or whatever, but, and sometimes it's not an option. Some families, you have to work literally just to get by, and Allah knows best. But if it's a situation where it's not a necessity, it's more out of want, then I definitely would recommend seeing where making sure that the kids, the time is being spent with the kids to make sure that they are being guided on the right direction, because that on that road, inshallah. So I hope that was helpful answer. Any other questions? Mm-hmm.
Take the village to raise a family, subhanAllah. No, there's no other questions at the moment online.
Okay, so just to wrap up, I hope the next time any of you use a GPS, you remember this halaqah, or every time you use it, maybe it'll be like a reminder that, oh my, I got to remember to recalibrate myself, my family, make sure we're on the right direction, make sure that we're all going towards our ultimate destination of Jannah, and not just for ourselves, because obviously we want Jannah, but we want it for all of our loved ones. So to make sure that all of us are helping each other on that path, bi'idhnillah. And so that hopefully that analogy helped. But subhanAllah, with Ramadan coming, Ramadan is one of the, it's the most blessed time of the year. And, when Ramadan, I feel like this, even though we didn't really talk much about Ramadan, is kind of a prelude to Ramadan, talking about preparing for Ramadan, because we want to try to, Ramadan should not be just like, all right, an event that comes and goes. So, when an event comes, we all put our, we put our 110 for that event. And then when the event is over, life kind of continues how it was. That it's not how we should approach Ramadan. But when we see, when we kind of step back and identify the map for our family and the direction that we're trying to go, Ramadan is an opportunity for us to really take advantage of literally zooming our family forward so much, because it's going to be a time of, inshallah, a lot of family time. Shaitan is not going to be there. So all of these goals that we hopefully will set by the end of this halaqah, or by the end of, this discussion, that hopefully will lead to all of us kind of setting these goals, Ramadan is the perfect time to really just go full force. So that way, after Ramadan, you'll find yourself so much farther away from where you were back in March. And that should be the ultimate goal, inshallah. And so with that said, just to wrap up, inshallah, is it is very common, it is very logical for us to, whenever we need to go somewhere, whenever we're going on a trip, whenever we're going to see a friend, we ask for the address and we start with the final destination in mind. And we never approach important things in our life with I'm going to just get in the car, drive for a few hours, and then eventually I'm going to try to figure out where I'm going. So just like we wouldn't do that with something as simple as going to see, going out to eat with a group of friends, we should never allow ourselves to intentionally or unintentionally treat our iman or our family's level of faith in that same manner, where we're saying we want to go to Jannah, but when we take a closer look at what we're doing in our home, there's nothing happening in the house that's leading us in that direction. So by doing kind of a self-analysis of our family, of our homes, what's going well, what's not going well, we want to capitalize on the strengths, but then we want to take a closer look on those areas of needed improvement. And then once we recognize those weaknesses, we identify a goal. What is it that we would like to accomplish? A desired goal. And then we identify the habits, very small habits, that will lead us in that direction. And once we make that a family plan, we have a meeting and everyone is on the same page regarding what the direction is. Everyone in the family should know what is our goal. Our goal is to go to Jannah. We should remind each other of that on a regular basis. And then after that, our goal is to every once in a while recalibrate, recheck, have a meeting. How are things going? What's going well? What's not going well? What do we need to change, adjust, and keep going? And bi'idhnillah, that will help all of us lead a life, a journey where us and the next generation are not influenced by these influencers or are not easily tricked into following the latest trend that teaches them to just become more, to become unintelligent or just do whatever you see. Inshallah, they'll be well grounded enough to know that I'm good. Thank you. I kind of know where I'm going. And inshallah, I don't want anything to distract me from that path all the way to Jannah. Inshallah. Jazakallah khair.
Allah khair, Sister Ezdehar. That was really wonderful. Does anyone have any comments or questions? Feel free to ask, or anyone wants to say anything. Inshallah. So inshallah, in the future, we could probably do something when Ramadan gets closer about prepping for Ramadan, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. And jazakallah khair for your talk. And with that being said, you can make a final remark and close, inshallah.
I just wanted to add anything that I said that was of any benefit is 100% from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I pray that this was all beneficial and pleasing to him and a means for us to get closer to him. And of course, anything that I might have said that was incorrect or inaccurate, that is 100% from me. And I seek his forgiveness. And again, may Allah make us from those who hear and listen these reminders and put it into practice and follow it to the best, with me being the first, inshallah. And I wanted to thank you again, Brother Hassan and TMC, for allowing me to come on. And do you want me to end with Surah Al-Asr, or do you want to end with dua?
Yeah, so just want to mention, we started a Seer class for the family on every Saturday at 7 o'clock at TMC. For anyone who's interested, we start at 7, we pray Salat al-Isha at 8. For anyone who wants to come down. Also, we started something in Arabic on Sundays at 7 also, about the system of Islam, for anyone who wants to attend that. And there is a translation provided. And we have some other activities that we are doing along that, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. That being said, Ezdehar, you can go ahead with Surah Al-Asr, inshallah.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. صدق الله العظيم. السلام عليكم.